Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified when new videos are released. The block today is called Expanding Star. It's 12-inch finished. Here is the diagram. This kind of looks like an octagon in the picture, but these four corners have a light fabric, and that's why it looks like an octagon here. And here are the blocks if you set them block to block. This block is a 3x3 grid, and because it's a 12-inch block, each of the units in the grid spaces will finish at 4 inches. Now, for the patches, we have two patches. We have an A patch and a B patch. The units we're going to make are half square triangles and flying geese. The A patch will make the half square triangles and the sky portion of the flying geese. For patch A, we cut squares that are 2 7/8 inches, and we cut them in half once on the diagonal to get 2 patches. Or you can just leave the square at 2 7/8 inches and use the method flying geese 4 at a time to make the flying geese, or half square triangles 2 at a time to make the half square triangles. And we'll demo both of those today. So for rotary cutting, if you're cutting with your rotary cutter and you're sewing, you have the choice to cut patches and sew the patches together, or you can cut your squares and use your half square triangles 2 at a time. Here are the AccuQuilt dies that will cut this half square triangle. And when you're using AccuQuilt, you are cutting patches. Here are the 2 different half square triangle units we're making. This one is the center unit, and we make one of those. We'll need 2 patches or 1 square of the 2 accent fabrics, and 4 patches or 2 squares of the background fabric. This is the corner unit, and we're going to make 4 of these. For each of the 4 fabrics, you'll need 8 patches or 4 squares. And these are the 2 half square triangle units we'll make. Down here is our flying geese unit, and these patches are the half square triangles for the sky parts of the flying geese unit. For the blue, you'll need 8 patches or 4 squares, and the same thing for the floral fabric. Patch B is a 4-inch finished quarter square triangle, and these are for the geese portion, the large triangle in the flying geese. We'll cut a square that's 5 1/4 inches, then we'll cut it in half diagonally twice to make 4 patches. Again, for rotary cutting, you have the choice of cutting and sewing patches, or you can cut squares to make the flying geese 4 at a time. AccuQuilt, you'll be cutting patches, and here are the dies you can use to cut that shape. For both of these fabrics, and remember these are the geese part, the larger triangle of the flying geese, you'll need 4 patches or 1 square for each of those. Here are the fabrics I've chosen, and the squares are already cut. I've cut all squares. This is the center unit where we'll make 1, and it will be 4 half square triangles. And I'm going to demo these by cutting patches. These will be the corner unit half square triangles, and we're going to do these 2 at a time, and we're going to use the squares. These are the 2 different flying geese units. I'm going to show you one that is using the patches, and the other will be the flying geese 4 at a time. These half square triangle parts, which are the sky part, are the same size as all of these are cut, 2 7/8 inches. So let's look at the center unit first, and here are my squares. I have 1 square of each of the accent fabrics and 2 squares of the background fabric. I'm going to take my ruler and cut these in half on the diagonal. So here is your square, and they're cut in half on the diagonal. These are patches. So this is 2 patches from this one square. And we did the same thing for all of these. To sew the half square triangles, we'll take one accent fabric and one background fabric and put the two together. You match all three of the sides so they should be the same size. Then we're going to stitch 1/4 inch along the long side of the triangle. Then press our seams open. This is if you are rotary cutting and you've cut your patches like I have done here. This is how you sew them. And if you have used your AccuQuilt to cut these, your corners, your points will be cut off here and here, but you sew them the same way. And one advantage of using patches, even though it takes a little bit longer to cut them, you can really just put these in the machine and chain piece them. So you put this in and stitch, take the next one, put them together, put it in the machine and stitch. You can just chain piece these one after another, then go and press your seams open. That's how you sew with patches. For 2 at a time half square triangles, we're going to use squares. These are the same squares we cut for the patches, same size. We just did not subcut them. We're going to put them together, and let's see, this goes with this. The green goes with the background and the two blues go together. We'll put them right sides together, and then there's a little tutorial coming up that shows you how to do these. On the back side of the light fabric, we're going to draw a diagonal line, put the fabrics together, right sides together, and we're going to stitch on either side of the diagonal line. Here is the diagonal line drawn, and then the stitching on both sides. Now we cut this in half along the diagonal line. Then we have our 2 half square triangles. Press the seams open and cut off the nubs. The half square triangles are all sewn, and we have 8 of the green and the background, and we have 8 of the blue. These will make the corner units. And then we have 2 each of the red and background and the orange and background. So here's a little bit of information for you. After you finish these, if you've rotary cut them in either method of sewing patches or sewing squares, be sure to cut off these nubs because they'll just get in the way of accurate piecing. So cut all of these nubs off. The second thing is, when I sew these together and I'm not using AccuQuilt, I use a scant 1/4 inch. So that means just slightly smaller than 1/4 inch. That gives me a little extra wiggle room. And if you still need more wiggle room after that, remember we cut these squares at 2 7/8. Some people prefer to cut the squares larger and then trim down the half square triangle when you're finished. If that's what you want to do, cut these at least 3 inches. Then sew them together and then trim every one of them down to 2.5 inches. Anything works fine as long as you get the results that you want. Now we're going to put these together. So we'll put these. This is the center unit, and they go together like this. Piece these 2 together, these 2, and then piece the 2 rows together, and we have our center unit. For the corner units, we're going to take 2 of these, 2 of each of them, and put those together like this. Again, piece these 2 together, these 2, and then piece your 2 rows together. And you'll make 4 of these for the corner units. Now let's turn to the flying geese. This set of flying geese is going to be made using the flying geese 4 at a time. Sometimes they call it the no waste method. Here I'm going to show you how you can cut patches and how you sew patches together. And this is for rotary cutting or for AccuQuilt. Let's cut it in half on the diagonal. This is the large for the large flying geese part. And we're going to cut this on the diagonal twice. Here are our 4 flying geese pieces. And then these squares we'll cut on the diagonal once. These were also cut at 2 7/8 inches. And we'll cut all those in half. We're going to take one of the large geese portion and then two of the sides. So these are the sky portion and this is the geese portion. Take one side, put right sides together, and you're going to match this bottom edge and this long edge here. Turn this around and stitch your 1/4 inch from this side all the way down. Just use a 1/4 inch here. This won't match up with anything, this angle here yet. So just a 1/4 inch, and then press your seams open. And do that for all 4 of your flying geese units. The right side is pieced, and we're going to press our seams open. And you'll notice this little dog ear, a little nub here. I'm going to trim this off even with this side of the triangle. Put this down here and then trim that off. You can use scissors to do the same thing. I'll take your other part, your other triangle, like this. Again, match the bottom edge and the side edge, and stitch a 1/4 inch. Now we've stitched the left side and press the seams open. We'll have 3 areas to cut off nubs. Across the top, cut this one off, and these on the left and right bottom edges. And then your flying geese unit is finished. Do that for the other 3 units for a total of 4 like this. This set of flying geese is going to be done using the 4 at a time, no waste method of making flying geese. And here is a short tutorial to show you how to do that. For flying geese 4 at a time, you need 1 large square and 4 small squares. The large square is the geese part of the flying geese, and the small squares are the sky part of the flying geese. On the back of each of the small squares, draw a diagonal line. Place 2 of the small squares, like this, on the large square, right sides together. You line up these edges and make sure these lines line up. Then you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch on both sides of that drawn line. Here are the 2 stitching lines on either side of the marked line, and now we cut it in half on the marked line. Now you'll open these up and press your seams open on both sides. Cut off the nubs. Now you'll place another square in this corner. Here's your diagonal line, and stitch on either side of the diagonal line. And do that for both of these. When you're stitching, your stitches should come out or start right at this point, this intersection here, this 90-degree angle. Cut this in half on the diagonal line, and you have these 2. Press your seams open and cut off your nubs. And do the same for this one. 4 flying geese. Our center unit is done and our 4 corner units are done. We have all of our flying geese done. The next thing to do is sew these flying geese units together like this to make the side units, and we'll make 4 of these. I've sewed them together and these are pressed open, and I wanted to show you when you sew these together, put the blue one on top, because this is the one that's pressed open and you can see where the point is. And do your 1/4 inch stitching and you can see exactly where that point is, and you don't want to cut it off. And then when you press it, you'll have a pretty point. Now let's take our trusty Prop-It board and we're going to lay out our units. Start with the center unit. Goes like that. And then the side units. And the corner units. The light fabric goes to the outside. And that doesn't look right. Let's see. Oh, that's right. Okay, those are right. So now you'll sew the top 3 units together, the middle together, and the bottom together. Press the seams and then sew the rows together. Here where you meet all of your points, you'll want to use the pin method to make your points pretty. You'll have at every intersection, you will have those. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a little tutorial coming up now. At some point when you finish your square on point unit, you'll have to sew something else to it. And you want to keep these points nice and sharp. And sometimes you might be matching it to a seam line or a plain piece of fabric or maybe another point. And I'm going to show you how to keep these points nice. If you've pressed your seam open, you will see where these 3 fabrics intersect and form a point right here. That's your point on the back, and it's also your point on the front. So you can stitch with this part on top, and you'll be able to make sure that your point stays there. I take a pin and put it right there at the point, and then pick it up on this back side. And in this case, I'm going to come down about 1/4 inch and then put that right in the seam line. That way the point will end up right on the seam line. Put your fabric pieces together and line up the top edges or the edges that you need to line up. And make sure your pin is perpendicular, goes straight down into the fabric, like that. If you're at an angle like this, your points won't match. So make sure they're straight, perpendicular to the fabric, and then put it into the fabric. When you start sewing, line up these edges here. Start at your 1/4 inch and sew all the way down, and you're going to aim for this point where that pin goes into the fabric. And you'll know that you're matching the point and the seam line on the back. And straighten your bottom edge again and continue stitching 1/4 inch off. And here's what the stitching looks like if you can barely see it on here with this thread. It goes right across here, leaving the point open. You're not stitching over the point. And then if I flip it over, you'll see it's not exactly 1/4 inch there, but that doesn't matter because what you want is the point to match the seam allowance here. Now just press the seam open and you're finished. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified when new videos are released.